Hey guys, Cronus Falls here, and today I'm going to be bringing you some news on the upcoming 1.14 patch. Now this has a lot of exciting stuff, and I'm happy to get into it right now. So first and foremost, the most exciting thing that's going to be coming up is the new artifact sorting system. So this should be very nice for us to have. It should allow you to sort by not only item types, such as weapon, helmet, chestplate, boots, etc., but we should also be able to sort by sets like offense, defense, speed, and main stat. Like let's say you have you want an attack percent chest. Star level, I believe, will also be available to sort by. And finally, substats. So let's say I want an attack percent chest with speed and crit damage. I can put that in there, and this piece will come up for me, which is very nice. It should help us, especially if we're cobbling together offsets, something like, let's say I don't have two pieces of offense that I want to put on this guy, but I do want this chest plate. It'll help me find stuff that I can pair with it that will make my build work. So very excited about that. I do a lot of artifact switching on my champions, and this will definitely help me out getting their builds to the right place. So after that, they've also announced that they're going to be buffing a few of the current buffs and debuffs. So let's get into that. First of all will be the leech debuff. And the leech debuff is going to be moving from a 10% lifesteal to 18%. Now this is very exciting because it could be a complete game changer on clan boss. Let's say you're running a speed team, for instance, and we're lucky enough to pull Siffy, or maybe you get Syl down the line once you hit that 180 days. And on their passive, they heal you for 10%, I believe, on Syl and 15% on Siffy. They're healing all your champions. And if you come in with a leech debuff and you have that 18% lifesteal, I mean, between those two things, you don't need lifesteal anymore. You could run complete speed sets. You could run accuracy sets. You could run whatever you want because your champions are going to be getting enough healing to survive long into the fight. So that's very exciting news. Should be a little bit of a meta changer, and I'm looking forward to that. They've also buffed up the Veil and Perfect Veil buff. So instead of just providing the ability to not be targeted, it will also provide a 7% damage reduction for those under a regular Veil and 15% damage reduction for those under a Perfect Veil. Now this buff definitely makes sense. Veil didn't do a whole lot before, so they're trying to bring it into more use, same as Leech. And it also explains why Duchess Lily 2 is being nerfed, and we'll get into that in a little bit. That's it for the buffs and debuffs that are being increased. And let's get into the champion rebalances that'll be coming out in 1.14. Now, this is information that's already been out there for a little while, but I haven't made a video on it, so I just wanted to go ahead and tell you guys what's going to be coming up. First of all, Lord Champfort, his A1 was attacks one enemy, has a 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Now that's what it is currently. It will be changing to no longer have a 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, but rather it will have a 45% chance to place a 60% decreased defense for 2 turns. Now decreased defense is way better than a 15% chance of a critical hit, and it should help bring this guy up a little bit in the meta. I don't think he's going to be game changing, but it will be helpful for anyone who has him. Decreased defense, even if it is single target, is good for like dungeon bosses, stuff like that. So he's a little bit more viable coming up in 1.14. And I'm sure with books, you'll be able to get it above a 45% chance. So that'll be cool. Also, his passive, which is currently places a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns at the start of each turn. Will place a 15% decreased speed debuff for 1 turn on whichever champion destroys the shield. The value of the shield is proportional to this champion's max HP. Now, it doesn't say it on the ability, but it was a 10% max HP shield that would come up on Lord Champfort. And they're going to be buffing that up to a 20% max HP shield. So that's cool. It'll help him be a little bit more sustainable. And again, nothing meta changing, but some good direction for Lord Champfort here. He will definitely be more useful with these buffs. And next we have the big one, which is going to be Mashaled. Now he's an Undead Hordes champion, a legendary. and considered probably one of the worst in the game. But with these new buffs, he is going to be amazing. So let's get into that. His A1 currently attacks one enemy, heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. That's okay, you know, he's healing himself, but nothing special. Now, in 1.14, his A1 will attack one enemy and also attack all enemies with a leech debuff and a heal, and he will heal himself for 30% of the damage dealt. So he will be attacking everyone because you'll see later he can place the leech debuff on AoE and healing himself for the 30%. Plus, I'm sure the healing will stack with the leech as well, so he'll be healing a lot off of this A1 here. His A2 is currently places a 30% increased speed buff and a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion and a target ally for 2 turns and grants him an extra turn. So this is okay, but going forward, the A2 will be crazy, which will place a 30% increased speed, a 30% increased crit damage on all allies, not just him and a target ally, and it will place a true fear and leech debuff on all enemies and grant an extra turn. It's insane. That is so much in a single ability, and it doesn't even take a turn. It does, but he'll be going again, so and it's not wasting any time. You're getting that leech up. You're going to be able to use the A1 to hit everyone. It's just wild. True fear for 2 turns, I believe it was. It's crazy. You can be knocking down their abilities. He's going to be very strong all across the board, really. I think you could take him into most dungeons at this point, and he could definitely do some work for you. So that's the A2. The A3 currently attacks one enemy, places a 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns, and inflicts 50% more damage against targets under buffs. So, I mean, this 100% heal reduction, it's nothing great. I mean, it's okay, but he only has a 1-hit A1, so you're not bringing him into Fire Knight. He's really only useful against the Spirit Keep, which is pretty easy anyways. But with 1.14, we'll now have an 80% chance to steal all buffs from an enemy and then attack them one time. I'm sure that 80% chance will be going up with books. And it still deals the 50% more damage, but it will be to enemies without buffs because he can steal them. And it will still place the 100% heal reduction on the target for 2 turns. And, this is crazy, he will be placing 2 15% heals on himself for 3 turns. I mean, that's like a bad Alcazar heal, but better. And granted, it's only on himself, but I mean, this guy's sustain is going to be crazy. The only issue is he is an attack champion, so he is a little bit squishy. But I believe this A3 already hits super hard. And if it's going to be stealing buffs and stuff, I mean, it's going to be doing a lot more utility for you. So if you had Masha led and you were crying about it, look no further. This guy is going to be amazing for you coming up in 1.14. I do have him, so I'm going to work on getting him maxed here so I can show him off once we get into 1.14, and I'm super excited about it. Let's go ahead and move on. So we've got War Chief, who is in the Skinwalkers, and it's this guy right here. So War Chief is getting a little bit of a change, not too much. First of all, his A2, which currently attacks one enemy, places a provoke debuff for 3 turns, has a 75% chance of stealing 2 random buffs from the target. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. Okay, so we get a 1-person provoke and 75% chance of stealing 2 random buffs. That's okay. They will be buffing it up, so instead of a 75% chance to steal buffs, it will be a 100% chance. And this cooldown here, this base cooldown, is going to be coming down from 5 turns to 4 turns. So once booked, it'll be on a 3-turn cooldown, so that's pretty nice for him. Also, his passive currently reflects 60% of damage taken back to the attacker, and his defense increases by 10% for each dead ally. So the only change to the passive here is that 10% is going to be going up to 15%. So nothing massive, just a little bit more defense for him. But that is War Chief. Alright, Mortu Macabre is next on our list here. And he is in the Demon Spawn. He is a legendary. And so he's got a few changes going on here. First of all, his A2, which currently attacks all enemies 2 times, places a block buffs debuff, for 2 turns on targets under heal reduction debuffs. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns against targets not under heal reduction buffs. So this is going to be changing up a little bit here. The A2 will now have a 90% chance to place block buffs for 2 turns, no matter what, which I'm sure will book up to 100%. And then if the enemy is under a heal reduction debuff, the block buffs will be unresistible. So that's kind of cool, you know, unresistible debuffs are nice. Also, I mean, it's just more consistent value for him, but nothing too crazy. The main change to him is going to be pretty helpful for Arena if you're using him, which is currently he has a 10% chance to unlock a secret skill on his passive. Peril for 1 turn also has a 20% chance to fill his champion's turn meter by 25% when attacked. So the only change that's going to be going on here, which is a big change for him, is that instead of a 10% chance to unlock it when he gets attacked, it will be changing to a 20% chance, which means this skill here, Peril, will be coming up a lot more often. It hits super hard. It attacks 1 enemy 2 times, ignores shield and block damage, as well as all of defense, and enemies killed by the skill cannot be revived, so that's a pretty strong skill. 20% still isn't super high to unlock it, but if you get into prolonged fights, it definitely comes up more. So this guy is going to be a little bit more usable now, and that'll be cool for him. So next we're going to be on to Richtof the Bold. Now there's a lot of love for Banner Lords in this patch, so we're going to be getting to him right here. He's a legendary. And so for Richtof, first of all, his A1, which currently attacks all enemies, decreases each target's max HP by 10% of the damage dealt, will now be decreasing target's max HP by 30% of the damage dealt. So nothing crazy. Honestly, still not that good of an A1, but I guess it's a little better for him. The A2, which is currently attacks 1 enemy 3 times, places a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns, and this debuff cannot be removed, is going to be changed. So his A2 will now apply a 5% poison to all enemies instead of just the target that he's attacking, but the poison can now be removed. So, I mean, a little bit more utility, you get more poison out there, but still not great. This guy I don't think is going to be coming into relevance at all, unfortunately, even with this patch. And finally, his A3, which currently attacks 1 enemy, copies 1 random debuff on the target and places it on all other enemies. Instead of doing this debuff spread right here, he is going to now deal 20% more damage to the target for each poison debuff on them, up to 100% additional damage. So he can hit for double damage. It's probably going to hit really hard, but I mean, you have to have 5 poison buffs up there to do that, which means it's not going to be useful in Arena. Might be useful against dungeon bosses, but not particularly. So I'm sorry if you have Richtof. He's still not going to be good, but hopefully he'll get more love in the future. Alrighty, so now we're on to epics, and we're going to be getting into Vergus and the High Elves. So Vergus is, he's okay. He's nothing special. He's a little bit of a support champion. He's going to be getting a little better, though, in that role with his A2 being buffed. So his A2 currently places a 15% continuous heal buff, a 15% increased speed buff, and a 30% reflect damage buff on a target ally for 3 turns. Also places a 50% ally protection buff on the target ally for 3 turns. This champion will take 50% of the damage inflicted on the target ally. So this is going to be changing. Looks like, first of all, the continuous heal is going to be going up to 30%, as well as 30% increased speed, keeping the 30% reflect damage. And the ally protection, instead of just going on to the 1 ally, will now be going on to all allies, but only for 2 turns. So, I mean, that's pretty decent. It'll keep him, just keeping people alive longer with ally protection across the board, because ally protection on only 1 person is kind of useless. And then to help sustain himself, his passive is going to be changing up a little bit here. So instead of placing a 15% continuous heal buff on himself for 2 turns every time his HP drops below 50%, he will also be placing a 10% shield buff on himself whenever his HP drops by 10%. So that'll just help him stay alive a little bit longer, you know, get those shields up so when he's taking damage from the ally protection, it can soak it up into the shield. So some decent changes for Vergus. Nothing game changing, he'll be a little bit better, but overall still the same Vergus you know. So Oathbound is going to be next. Oathbound is in the Banner Lords. He is an epic. Like I said, lots of love for Banner Lords this patch. And so first of all, his A2 will be changing. So currently it attacks one enemy 3 times and has a 60% chance of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. Each hit has a 30% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 30%, and damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So I mean, this is okay, but what it's going to be changing to now is it will attack all enemies 1 time instead of one enemy 3 times. And it's going to have a 55% chance to decrease enemy turn meter by 20%, which is pretty good. You know, any time that you can reduce turn meter is very nice, and I'm sure it'll book up higher than 55. If it stays like this, it'll get up to, what would that be, 75% chance, which would be nice. And also, it will have a 75% chance to place a decrease attack. So if it stays like this, that would end up being a 95% chance, 100 if you got Sniper. So that's pretty decent. You know, you can get decreased attack up on everyone, maybe drop the turn meter, pretty decent move. And then his A3 will also be changing. So currently it attacks at random 4 times. Each attack has a 30% chance of placing a block cooldown skills debuff for 2 turns, and damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So the change to this is going to be actually pretty cool, and instead of blocking it at a 30% chance, if they are under a decrease attack debuff, it will be a 100% chance, which is pretty crazy. Block cooldowns is very good for Arena, and unfortunately it does attack 4 times at random. If it was AoE, this would be very strong. It would be, you know, like a weaker Hegemon, but he is an epic, so that would make sense. But yeah, blocking cooldown skills could be very interesting to come into Arena with. You could start out with someone like a Madame Ceres or a Stag Knight, and then this guy comes in next and blocks your cooldown skills for, 2 turns. I mean, that's pretty strong. You get him in Master Hexer 3 turns, now you're looking pretty good. So that's Oathbound. I think he could have some interesting play going forward if you have him, but we will see. Only time will tell on that. And then finally, we have a debuff to one of the champions, or a nerf, rather, and that is Duchess Lily 2. So Duchess Lily 2 is a very strong legendary, very good in pretty much every piece of content in the game, all the dungeons, arena, clan boss. And so the nerf to her is actually going to be that on her passive, instead of decreasing damage taken by all allies from AoE attacks by 40% if they're under a Veil buff, that will be going away. It will just be the 25% normally. But because of the buff to Veil, which will be a 7% increase from Veil and a 15% increase from Perfect Veil, it's basically going to be the same thing. You know, she places everyone under a Perfect Veil for 2 turns. So they'll be getting that 15% increase. And she's basically going to be exactly the same. So if you have her, don't be mad about the debuff to her. She's going to be just fine. Yeah, so that's it for patch 1.14 as far as we know so far. A lot of exciting changes, especially the artifact sorting, and I am looking forward to that coming out. Hopefully, in future patches, we'll be getting more content as well as far as stuff to do in the game. That is sorely needed. But I think this is definitely a good direction. I'm really excited. I hope you guys are too. So subscribe down below if you enjoyed the video, and please comment anything you'd like to see me do in future videos. And thanks.